only the South needs to adjust, which is adjusting rapidly, but there has to be a symmetrical effort on the part of the North in order to provide the kind of stimulus that will allow the South to exit this recession through export-led growth. It is impossible for the Southern economies to be able to move out of recession if there's no demand in the Eurozone, there's no demand in the European and global economy either, and it is impossible to do so if the country risk overhangs every effort they make. No investment would direct you to the South. Even the healthiest export-oriented economies are incapable of getting any credit, are incapable of getting import credit, because at every moment the country risk is over there. The cost of capital that any Southern European economy or any Greek company has is huge. Any effort to cut wages and unit labor costs, any such effort will be swallowed by the large capital cost.
Extremely destabilizing for any Euro member state to depart the Eurozone. That would be the beginning of the unraveling of the Eurozone. It would be the beginning of a slippery slope. It would create a panic of depositors with banking systems. Speculators and markets would start speculating who will be next.
Okay.
It will create enormous instability in the Eurozone, and that is why the same decision that has been made by the European Council has been to keep the periphery within the Eurozone at any cost, because any cost is lower than the cost. Greece has subscribed to this bailout package because it wants to seal, to consolidate its position in the euro. And this is the necessary price we have to pay to put order in our public finances, to implement the necessary structural reforms that will increase the competitiveness of our economy. We have gained 50% in terms of unit labor costs of the competitiveness lost between 2000 and 2008. We've regained it within the last 2 years. We are catching up.
It is often said Greeks are not working enough. We are the hardest working in the OECD. I would personally wish I was Dutch, because I would have the lowest number of working hours, but I would be among the most productive.
In a governance system of low credibility, you want to front-load the reforms. You do not trust the medium and long term. You do not know what the pain threshold will be in society, so you don't know whether society and the governance system will remain committed to reforms if you give them a longer-term horizon. I can understand the rationale, but the problem is that if you subscribe, from the moment you subscribe to such heavily front-loaded package of reforms, all kinds of, a can of worms opens in terms of how society reacts. And no one knew what the pain threshold of Greek society was, but now we're coming close to understand what it is. When you see extreme right-wing thugs on the streets in middle-class neighborhoods, and the large majority of them are young people who are unemployed, you know that they are getting worse as a result of the crisis. How long can working people, withstand a reality that their wages will be cut this year, cut the next year? The third year, they might not even have a job, and their unemployment benefit would be, 3/4 of what it used to be, and half of their family will also be out of a job. How long can a society last under this process? Strategically, the effort of the country and its political parties and governments has been to last as long as it can around the table until the moment the Eurozone is able to implement the kind of shift that is needed in order to have more viable Eurozone institutions and a more viable Greek economy within this Eurozone. There was no illusion, probably from the beginning, about the recessionary impact of these measures. And there was no illusion also about the need for Greek society, Greek economy to reform. And I did not question the necessity of bringing down a budget deficit of 15% to a primary budget surplus. This is necessary. You cannot be a part of the Eurozone and keep on running primary budget deficits. You cannot be part of the Eurozone and have such unit labor cost divergence and have a current account deficit nearly double digit. But there is a question of how you do that, how you coordinate these policies, and what kind of offsetting instruments you have. We've been able to offer a real backstop in terms of the speculation about Eurozone exit. And what we are witnessing in the South is the result of that. Whatever the Eurozone does is considered by the markets as giving the peripherals, and especially Greece, which is the worst case, a little more time. Is that, you will be in the euro as long as you implement the reforms, and for the next few months, you're probably going to be in the euro, but then I don't know. This kind of reaction is not helping. And it's not only it's not helping, it's self-defeating. Greece is receiving a lot of beating because it is not developing the kind of state that would be as efficient and had the integrity of that of France or Germany. Every Greek of our way of thinking would think that, keep on beating us because it's the only way that we can move faster towards that. But if you end up believing that you can actually generate such a transformation in 2 or 3 years at a time when the wages of the people working in that state have been cut by 30 or 40%, and their life is much more miserable than it was, and they're developing depression problems or whatever, you are really fooling yourself.
It's probably redundant for me to point out the disastrous effects of disintegration and the domino effects that an exit of even one country, one single country, would involve for the rest of the Eurozone. And it seems to me that at least these effects are quite clear in the minds of our policymakers. So they know what they want to avoid, they know what they would like to have, what they don't know is how to get there.
A whole generation of Europeans seems to become socialized with the notion of the European Union that is identified with being excluded from the labor market, and it tends to embrace extremist ideologies.
Les énormes efforts que nous avons faits avec un prix socio-économique et politique à payer, tous ces gains sont maintenant effacés par les coûts excessifs que nous devons pratiquer en Espagne, en Grèce, en Italie. Il y a eu beaucoup de propositions pour régler ces problèmes. Le problème étant que nous avons eu de nombreuses faillites de sociétés dans le sud de l'Europe. Peut-être que c'était des faillites justifiées, car c'était des sociétés qui n'étaient pas très productives, qui n'étaient...
And finally, the effort to rethink Europe. What should the European Union be about? And we said that the European Union should be about the important stuff. That is, should be able to guarantee fundamental rights, including social rights, to be able to provide a standard of living that subscribes to basic minimal standards having to do with access to education or health services that should be given and guaranteed for all its members. And also a European Union that would be able, through these actions, to establish a kind of caring dimension.
It's a real question. Why?
Well, these big questions, they have one problem, that they're with us for a very long time. I mean, I come from Greece, and we've been asking these questions for the last 3,000 years. Why democracy, why freedom, and things like that. And,
what was the exact reason to all do this?
Well, this exactly. I mean, when Europe started, the answer to this why was very clear, in order not to have war. And then it was prosperity, and then it was building a European social model. And we started to losing this track over the last couple of decades. And I think the main thing that is important now in Europe is the answer that is most convincing. And you might find it too defensive, but it is in order to defend our European way of living. This is why we have to keep this project together, and in order to be able to keep it together, we have to move on in building more stable institutions.
I believe that Germany has shown solidarity. I think that what is required today by Germany is to show this kind of enlightened self-interest that Mario Monti once spoke about. The collective benefit of Germany as every member in the Eurozone, and especially Germany as a leading member in the Eurozone, is to have a Eurozone that is sustainable on the long run. The most critical error that was committed this year was to place Brexit on the table as an official agenda item. It is a precedent which I believe will weigh very heavily upon the Eurozone. Any crisis that would come in the future to any country will be judged against this precedent. And this is how you turn a currency union, which has the ambition of growing up to become a more proper economic union, this is how you turn it into a fixed exchange rate area. And by doing so, you condemn the peripheral economies to an eternally vicious circle of higher borrowing costs because they have to factor in the depreciation, the currency depreciation risk, and an endless wage deflation that will cancel any adjustment effort.
But the most important element, I believe, at least from this corner of Europe, in allowing the European and the Eurozone economy to grow in a cohesive way and in a sustainable way, will be its ability to resolve the problems of collective coexistence under a single currency. And the only way forward to that, and let me finish with this expression of my déformation professionnelle, is to move to a real economic union inside the monetary union, with real full-fledged political institutions, significant structures of mutualization, and also viable and rigorous mechanisms of discipline and national policy responsibility. This is the only way forward, the way I see it, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.